Hi, I'm Ron Nutter, and welcome to another edition of Tech Bites with Ron Nutter. This time we're going to handle something a little bit different, but it's something that I think we're probably all dealing with, some of us more than others, and that's dealing with a power outage in your smart home. And I have had not one but two outages in the past week, and I won't name the power company, but I don't think preventative maintenance is on high on their list because since we were acquired from the previous company, I went from having an outage a year to one every 2 or 3 months, and this past one was two in the same day, and the last big one behind that was about 3 days. So I've got to do something. This is forcing an issue that I was kind of looking at for quite a while. So we're going to set the stage. There's several different ways to do it. And yes, you can go out and get a generator, but sometimes you don't need to keep the whole house up. And then the challenge with the generator is you have to keep a supply of gasoline handy or get one of those whole house ones, which is quite a bit of money, have it tied into natural gas or have a propane tank. So let's kind of see where this goes. We're going to start kind of going through the process here, and this is something this is what I call level one. I've got I've got actually 3 different levels, and let me get some stuff closed out of the way here. And this is the fun of doing live video. Okay, now this is going to be what we call a level 1. Now this is at a base level that really you should be at. It doesn't cost that much in the grand scheme of things. So now when I say mains here, I'm talking electrical power. That mains is just a term I've heard over the years, and it just has kind of stuck with me. So I've got a UPS here and then a workstation. Now the workstation is just kind of a placeholder. It's actually for me a surge protection strip where I've got multiple things behind it, because let's face it, what UPS has enough outlets for everything. So that's just the way I've kind of started doing it. There are several different UPSs you can get, and there are in the notes for this video, or if you're listening to the podcast in the show notes, you'll see a listing of what I've looked at. Now, there's a little bit of research you need to do, and I'm going to switch over here to the inverter tab, and this will show you the kind of process I went through to figure everything out. And the first thing that you really need to do is you need to do an inventory of what you want to have up and running. And this is something that I'm not starting big, and to me this is more of a proof of concept, because I'm not going to be able to have one UPS to handle everything because of the way my house is wired. And that's just the lot in life. So at this point I've got a laptop, 2 monitors, and a UPS hub. Now, before you say UPS hub doesn't have to be powered, well, the one I have does, because I don't like having a lot of USB things plugged into the laptop with and drawing a lot of power out of the USB port. And I've actually blown a USB port at one point because I was pulling too much power. So I've got both the amperage here, and of course everything runs on 120, at least here in the United States. That I've got. So you see all the amperage here, and then it also had the watts figure broken out, and these are going directly from the devices, what they listed. So at this point you can see I'm looking at 684 watts. So it's not quite an amp, but it's enough that it ends up pulling that. Then it could be, I need to have some time in there, because the outages that I've had, they're either, say, 2 or 3 minutes where it's just enough where everything completely powers down in the house and then comes back up, or like what I had this past week where it lasted for over 3 hours, the second one. And good luck at getting anybody on the phone with the utility. And I've had one last as long as 3 days, and that was after a rather heavy windstorm, and I've actually gone through one that was 7 days. So you have to figure out what your pain point is as to what you will want to try to build the system for. Now, having gotten those manual figures, and that's one part of the process, that's kind of what I call the worst case scenario situation. Let me scroll down here, and you're going to see this kilowatt electric usage monitor, and I'm going to open up a tab on that one, because this is a tool that you want to add to your bag of tricks. And you see for $20, and I've got the affiliate links or in the notes, and if I do get a small commission on that, but it doesn't change the price that you pay. This is very handy for you to have, and you'll actually press, if you see highlighted the watt button, that's what you'll want to watch, because most of your UPSs and your inverters, and we're going to get to inverters here in just a second, are going to have their output or what they can supply in terms of watts. So it's a little bit easier to add up. So we get back to the process here, and at this point, before I put the UPS in line, I took the surge protector that the workstation and my monitors were plugged into, and I plugged it in, and I plugged it into the mains. I was in a little bit of surprise what the numbers actually told me. It told me a fraction, and I mean, it was about 20% of what I was expecting. And I mean, I didn't expect the numbers to be hitting maximum, but I didn't expect them to be so far below where they were. So you've got kind of a minimum maximum deal. And when you go to size your UPS, I would size it, and this is what I did. I sized it for what the figures showed in the spreadsheet, because that way, and we'll go back up here, that's a healthy UPS to run at that point. So that gives you a little bit of runtime, although I have had dealings with an international company that has data centers all over the world. And I was in one of their data centers one time, and I noticed this outbuilding, and I questioned what that was. Oh, that's where we keep all the batteries for the UPS. And I said, well, how long does that let you run? Well, it lets us gets us up and running long enough to where we can get the generator spun up, and then we try to shut everything down, because their whole goal, because of the amount of equipment they had, is not to run forever. And that's not something that you really want to try to do unless you're going to get a whole house generator. And even then, do you really need to? So you've got to figure out what your pain point is. Now, for example, I've got a job where I can work from home, so I need to have some ability to be online for the better part of a day. And maybe a half a day, but I'm shooting for a day, and you'll see where this is going to go in that process. Now, the UPS that I've got here is going to be something that if I come out to where I think I'm going to, at least based on the specs that all the devices said, I'll get about an hour, maybe 2 hours runtime, which is not bad. And I'm hoping for maybe about an hour. And the key thing is, if you say you come up with 700 watts, you don't want to buy a 700 watt UPS. You're going to be very disappointed. It's not going to keep things up. You'll be lucky to get maybe 5-10 minutes if you're lucky. And then over time, the battery is not going to hold as much. So you'll want to get something that's probably going to be double what you think you're going to need to have. And it's going to be cheaper to do that now than having to do it later, because a lot of these UPSs are not expandable on the backside. So that's option one. And I look at it as more of my short-term solution. Now, if we go here into a level 2 option, this is where the inverter comes into the mix, and this is something that is a little more involved. So you see, I still have my workstation and the monitors right here. UPS is here. Now, you see an inverter over here, and basically an inverter is going to be, it's like UPS, but it's a little bit different. With an inverter, I can tie multiple batteries. Now, the battery I've selected is a 90 amp hour battery. Going by the numbers, that should get me several hours of runtime, maybe a little bit more. And this is where this is just what I've benchmarked at this point. And the beauty of an inverter is I'm not limited to a single battery, because essentially I'm using, well, in my case, I'm going to use a marine deep cycle battery. I can just keep putting batteries in parallel, so I get more and more runtime for essentially the cost of the battery. Now, they do have to be charged, so there is a trickle charger, and some of this equipment I've already got. Some of it is on the way in. Some of it I'll be picking up later today, because car batteries or marine batteries are not something you necessarily will have shipped. So I've got to go to the battery place and pick one up from them. So you'll use the charger when this is not being used. So when you've got regular mains power, that's when you'll charge this back up, and you'll see what I'm looking at to do that. Now, this is the first part of level 2, and this is maybe the where you stop, because at most of the time, and this is where you want everything on a UPS, if you lose mains power, all you have to do is turn on the inverter, because I'm not going to leave it running all the time, because that's going to run down the battery if I'm not using it. So I turn on the inverter, give it a chance to get all settled and make sure its self-tests are okay, and then I just simply unplug the cable from the wall outlet for the UPS and plug it into the inverter. And then UPS thinks it's back online. It doesn't know that it's plugged into an inverter, and you go from there. So, and that's really, it's that simple. Now, keep in mind that, this is going to be a manual cable move. So when you do get mains power back, you simply unplug, go back into the wall. Now, if you don't want to do that, here's the next option. And this is level 3. We get what's called a transfer switch. And this basically automates the whole process to where you don't have to do anything. The switch is, the one I've looked at, it's about an 8x10 box deal. And there's some relays and I'm sure other things in there. I haven't gotten that ordered yet because I want to see how the first part works. So once it senses that mains power is down, it switches over and goes to the inverter. Now you'll still want a UPS here because you don't want things to go down while it's switching over. So that's kind of in a nutshell where I'm thinking of going with this one. Now I already showed you the kilowatt. Now this is the UPS that should be here today. I could have gone larger, I could have gone smaller, but I was trying to have something of greater capacity than what I had to have, because anytime you're running a UPS like this, you don't want to be running it anywhere near its maximum. I try to run it no more than about 50% because that gives you more runtime out of the battery. Now, here's the inverter that I've got. Now, actually, I got the 1200 watt one again because I was looking at what the spreadsheet showed me and it said 684. Well, technically it was 1400 watts, but I didn't want to go up to a 1500 watt inverter. So I got the 1200 watt inverter. You see there is a 15, but it was substantially more than what I ended up getting the 1200 for. And the 1200 is not showing right now. It should be back in stock here, hopefully fairly soon. Now you see it's got 3 outlets on the front and it's got posts on the back for you to tie the battery into. And it supplies, and this is what I really like, the cabling is supplied, and you also have an LCD panel up front that shows you the voltage that it's supplying, that it's getting from the batteries. It's showing you the frequency that it's sending out, and then it gives you an idea of the voltage it's putting out plus the waveform. Now the waveform, I'm not going to get real technical here, but there's 2 types of inverters. There's pure sine wave and there's modified sine wave. If it's a total electronic device, modified sine wave will probably be okay. But here's the catch. Motors don't like it. You will hear the motors, the actual will make it a sound because they're dealing with a type of power they're not used to. So I just went and tried to be as safe as I could and got a pure sine wave inverter. And that way, no matter what I plug in, it should be happy, because I might decide I have to plug the fridge in so I can keep the food going if the outage occurs over a weekend and I don't want to lose food. Now, the other piece of the pie to this is a charger. And I reached out to Duracell, thanking them very much for their assistance, and they gave me an idea of what to look for in a charger, because I didn't want to overcharge the battery, but I also didn't want to take forever. This is a charger that they recommended, and here's the deal. It has multiple charging rates. So it has 2 amp, 6 amp, 10 amp. So if I've depleted the battery heavily, and since I'm using a marine deep cycle battery, I don't want to run the thing all the way to the bottom. The general rule that I found is you don't want to take the battery below 50%. Now, obviously, if it's an emergency and you don't have a choice, yeah, you'll need to pretty much take it down as far as you can still get good power from it. But on the other hand, if you're taking it down that far on a routine basis, you probably want to hook on a second or maybe even a third battery in parallel so that you can have the extended runtime that you need. What I like to do with chargers, and this is considered a smart charger, it will look at the condition of the battery, find out how best to charge it, what conditioning it may have to do. So it's not just a brute force shove the power down the line and get the battery charged back up. So, and it will keep the battery topped off, because you have a battery sitting there over time, it will start to lose charge, and you may have the rude awakening that when you need it, you really are going to be hard pressed to do much of anything, because the power won't be there. So that's where I'll leave it on trickle charge, and that way, the battery's being looked at. And unless it's a sealed battery, and sealed batteries are going to be more, you'll want to make sure that you got the water in it, that you're not running it dry. So this is just kind of a thumbnail sketch. I wanted to paint a picture for you of what I was looking to do. I'll first be bringing the UPS online, going by the clock. Hopefully UPS will have it here in the next couple hours. And I'll initially bring the UPS up, make sure the battery is fully charged before I try to put a load on it. And it probably is going to have most of a charge, but you never know with sometimes how long these things have been sitting in the warehouse. And then we'll go through the steps, and I'll go into as much detail as you want to, but this could have ended up being a very long video, and I was wanting to be respectful of your time to just kind of give it to you in chunks, because there will be software that comes with the UPS. There's some settings we may want to look at there, and then go through and getting the inverter set up, getting the battery charged. So there's a lot to go through here, but it's nothing that you can't do, nothing that I'm not going to be able to do. And the nice thing is, this at least gets me to a point that I can keep things up and running. Now, there are going to be some issues we'll talk about at a later point about keeping your internet connection up and running. I may actually have to get a second UPS, because I'm on Google Fiber where I live, and I've got a media converter in another part of the house. It's the first generation, so I can't do a power over Ethernet connection down to it to feed it power remotely. And I'm going to have to reach out to Google and see if I can get an upgrade on that one so that I can do that. And where my work area is set up is not where the Google Fiber connection terminates up on the main floor. So I'm going to put probably a smaller UPS there. But I'm just trying to baby step this, is at this point, if I do lose internet when power goes down, and I will, that I can just take the phone to being a hotspot, and that will at least get me by until power does get restored. But you see a sense of where this is going to be going. And there's a lot that this has the potential for. And with a smart home, we've all got to think about this. And I've tried to pick something that's going to be easy to do, that you're not going to have to get an electrician involved. And that's where, when I found the transfer switch, and there's going to be a little bit of wiring that has to be done, but nothing that's going to be an issue, because when I get to that point, I'll take you through the steps that I'm going through so you can pretty much copy what I'm doing. And it's just going to be that much easier for things to do, because unfortunately, power is not guaranteed, whether it's a bad snowstorm, heavy rainstorm, high winds. It's not a matter of if you're going to lose power, it's a matter of when. And the more rural you are, the more likelihood that you will probably lose power. If you're in an area with buried utilities, you're not going to be as likely to lose power, from the experience that I had. And that could be different for everybody. So this is kind of what we're looking at. I'll be doing several videos. I've actually got to get the equipment up and running. Some of it, I've already got the inverter, but I got to go get the battery. The UPS will be here later today, as well as the charger. So it'll be, over the next several days, going through quite a bit to get everything up and running, and be taking notes. And we'll be sharing with you as I go along to help you avoid have to do a lot of the research that I've done. Because I've stopped keeping count of the amount of research I've done, because I was looking at all the different options, because the charger, for example, that I ended up using was not what I started out with. But with what Duracell suggested, and they weren't endorsing it, but they suggested looking at this one, and I looked at it, that makes a lot of sense. And the price was actually better than what I was looking at for a charger that I have used from another company for years. So thank you, Duracell, for looking out for your client on this one. So the channel continues to grow. Thank you very much for that. If you have gotten some benefit out of this video, if you click the like button, would appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Anytime you ask a question, I'll be happy to do what I can. I am running a little bit behind again, but I'm going to try to get caught up on that here fairly soon. And I may look at a UPS at some point, but that's going to be probably down the road a little bit, because I'm trying to do a minimalist approach, getting by without having to have a big UPS put in or have to bring an electrician in and have it wired in. And because I've been through, like I said, an outage that went for 7 days. So once you've dealt with that kind of outage, you look at things a little bit differently. So you'll see on the screen here some other videos to look at, and this will give you an idea of other things that I've been working on relating to smart home technology. And thank you for your time and watching the video, and I will see you next time. Take care.